Hi there. So I'll like now to take you through the administrator portal, and this is just to demonstrate the features and functions of the administrator. So first, you need to log in as an administrator. You need to have admin login details. One thing to note here is that I am using the super administrator. Um, Obviously, other roles and permissions can be created, and I'll demonstrate that now. But essentially, I'd like to take you to the admin, so you get to see what the administrator does and how do you manage administrator functions. Um, and more precisely as well, for this video, we'll have a few videos about the administrator, but for this particular video, we are going to focus on user functionality. So, does the administrator manage the users, the security aspect of the portal as well? So, I'll log in as an administrator, and as soon as I log in, you are going to see something completely different. Well, in terms of the information that you see on the screen. When I am logged in as a user, I only see information on the dashboard pertaining to me. But when I log in as an administrator, I get to see information on the dashboard that is an aggregation of everything that is happening on the portal. And so when you look at my administrator dashboard, when it comes to SMS services, I am looking at the campaigns that are conducted by several companies. So for each campaign, you get Roland, he has this campaign and he has three, and you see other, and you can go on and on to view information about about what those campaigns are being created. And you can have a glimpse on top here on the dashboard. So the administrator dashboard is very important. It allows you to look at the key metrics, not for a single user, but for multiple user. But additionally, through the filters that you have here, you are able to then narrow down your search and the info you want. So let's say I only want to see information for Roland AP. I'll say Roland AP from any date all the way to today or tomorrow, right? And it tells you Roland AP has seven campaigns, sent 23 messages. He has four strings allocated to him. These are the four strings that you can see here. These are the seven campaigns, but none of these strings have been activated, meaning that we haven't seen any session being created. However, if we go to another user, let's say a different company, let's say we go to the Quibi company, for instance, you see the informations that are happening from the Quibi company. And if we go to B-Tree, for instance, you see all of the informations. And B-Tree has a string that is active, and you get to see that the string has had 23, so 15 sessions, and it has had 23 responses, right? So this account has an active USSD string being out there. So, and you can clean the filters. And when you clean the filters, it just sets it back to the default. So you're able to see everything that's going on there. Now, the part that I just wanted to take you through here is the security component first. So, on the security component, we have five main features. We have users, we have roles, we have application management, we have security policy, and we have configuration. So, managing users. So, when you go to users, remember that the application that we have now is what you call a multi-tenant. Each user manage their information within their own company. When you talk about users in the security measure, it's only allowing you to manage user security component, which is user access. And it gives you the ability to navigate through many things. So right here, you can create a user. But remember, the user that you would create here, if you create that user will not be linked to any company. So when you see create user from this perspective, you're only creating an administrator. You're not creating a user linked to any company. You're basically simply creating an administrator. Okay. So, and you just need to click on create and you get to the form and you complete the form. Now you're able to view all the users. And again, this is pertaining to the security of the users. So you're able to, if you are the super administrator, of course, you're able to view user information, you're able to update user information. But again, you're not updating the company information or anything. You're only updating the access information. You're able to delete a user, right? You're able to assign roles. You're able to assign permission to the user. And you're able to see if a user is active or not. So if, for instance, Clark 494, as you can see here, is clearly not active. So that means this user can't access the platform. It's very important to note that. So if there is user active is not checked, it means this user can't access the platform, right? So that's about the users. You're able to edit, update, delete user accounts quite easily. And then we go to roles and permissions, right? So what we've done in this application as an administrator, we've given you the role to create the ability to create multiple roles and multiple permission. And what's really important when you're creating a role is that you can name the role, but the parts that's important is the permission. So because I'll show you how that one works. So we select create under roles and we name it. Let's name this one testing demo, right? So that's the role. Description, we are simply testing. And you get to select the security policy that goes with the role. We have the default policy, we apply it, and you'll see the impact of it once you start. And so you would see it appears here, testing demo. Now, what happens? You go to permission them, and you select on permission and you select the application that's being used. We have two applications. We have the main application and we have the GAM backend. The GAM backend simply is where it's another administrative portal. I'll show it to you a little bit later. So you see on the main, this role has no permission whatsoever. So if a user is assigned this role, they will do nothing because you can see there is nothing. And so what you would do is you would create. You go and you say create. And when you say create, you have a list of all the roles that are on the platform. So you could change it at will based on what you want. Now, what you need to remember is that the way we've created the system, the roles, the permissions are automatically assigned as the developers are building new pages and new component and new features and new functions. Those permissions are automatically allocated. So what would happen is what you see here is essentially pages and features and functions that shows up when you get here. So it's very important to communicate to your developer what the roles need to be, and your developer will be able to navigate that easily. Now, if you have someone technical who wants to tackle the issues of creating new roles, it's also fairly straightforward. But the main principle is this: the name of the role is oftentimes very clear. This speaks about the bank's delete. So it's the ability to delete a bank. Banks execute your ability to create something or do something with the bank, with the banking module, right? And one thing we can say, let's call one SMS. So you have your SMS's details, SMS campaign, and can you delete a campaign? Can you execute a campaign? Can you have full control over a campaign? And it's saying that here. The most important part is to look at the the URL. The URL oftentimes tells you what the page is and what the role is. So here you can see the URL extension is GAM role permission select. So if you ever find GAM role permission select, right? So let's see if we have such a role. I hope this is a good example. Okay, I think I've gotten that. I just hope this is a good example. Let's see. Correct. So you see, GAM role permission select execute, and that's the page that we're on. So if we say great, select this, and then we say add selected. Now you would see that under this user, the role is Gumroad permission select. That means this user can only get to this page. And that's tricky because if there is nothing leading to getting to this page, it means that the user needs to literally go ahead and put that into the URL to access it, which isn't fair. But this is just to show you how you manage the role. The trick is look at the pages and the things that you want to allocate your users role to using the URL. And most of the time, more often than not, more than 90% of the time, you will get it correct. And you just keep on assigning those roles, and that provides the user with user roles and the permissions that they need, because under that role, all of those will be executed. Now, let's just show you a role that's slightly more complete than this. Not slightly, significantly more complete. Um, and that speaks to the business user. So, as a business user, let's go to the permissions. And when you look at the permissions allocated to the business user, you would notice that there is a lot more permissions here, right? So we have page 1 of 11. It means that this user, and each page is 10. So this user, we can fairly assume that this user has 110 permissions on the system. And that goes from everything company document, full control. And when you select full control, it adds the insert, update, and delete to it. And when you go back as a user, you're able to see these appearing. And that's why it's very important to assess primarily what a user is going to be able to do with roles and then implement it easily. And the trick to implement that easily is to look into the URL to know what is the page that this user needs to access. All right. And next we go into application management. Again, these are not features that we allow just any administrator to use. Only the super administrator is allowed to do it. Now, what happens with the application management is you're able to modify the menu, the way the menu looks. You can go to menus, and the transaction to modify the menu is fairly simple, right? Here you see all of the menu options that are being created. So all of this that you see are just menu functions that were created and they weren't developers related. And you can see the list goes the purchase, the USSD string, and all of it. An important one that you need to notice is the main menu, right? So you come here and you look at the main menu. The main menu contains everything that you see in your menu bar. So if we select menu options in the main menu functions, you will see that even the order matches what we have, right? We have home, we have security, we have back office, we have sales management, customer management, purchase, SMS service, account management, and API documentation. Exactly how we've ordered it on the menu bar, right? And how do you get there, right? So the process again, fairly simple. You would say create, and that means now you're under the main menu, right? So you say create, never touch anything that says GUI ID. It's often system generated. And you can say test. And if you say test and describe it to say test, that's fine. It says what type of menu is this? Is it a simple menu? Is it a menu item? So if you say it's a simple menu, it just asks what is the permission that you would like to add. So here, if I say the permission that I would like to add here is bank's view. So it simply means that when I click on this menu item, I should be able to view all of the banks. So I go, okay, perfect. Let's state that. Let's hit bank view. Okay. And I come here and you see at the bottom, it's been immediately added. And I'll select. If I select it, there is no record. So Which bank view are you seeing? Which is very important. And now I'll show you the trick to make sure that you get to see a record. Um, and essentially, you can see there's no record here. So you're viewing nothing. So that's an example of how to not do it. Um, so it means that you need to understand the roles and the permissions quite well. So let's go back. We go to menu. And by the way, if you go, you wonder, how do we add the menu items like this? You come here and you go create. So on this menu options, you create. So I would say test. Name, I'll also say test. This is just for sake of demonstration. What's going to happen here is I will find test now, and I find it all the way here. And then I say, what are the menu options under this test? Now we start to see, oh, there is no menu option under the test. So I go create. And from here, I name, let's say I call this test one. And I call description test one. The menu item here, it's going to be empty. And I say, okay, you know what? I want to see Banks WW. So this means it's to view the list. When you see WW attached, it refers to a list. Let's say Banks WW. That's the one I want to see. And I say, okay. So we have one menu item, test one. Let me select another one. And this would be, let's call this test two. And the description will be test two. And the role this time I'll say, okay, I want this to be essentially, let's call it companies. So company WW, that gives me a list of all of the company. And I say, okay, perfect. I am happy with that, right? So I will go back and you can just follow the breadcrumbs here, right? So now it goes menu of application. So I go, okay, this is the menu of the application. Great. Now I go main menu. Fantastic. And I go, which menu do I need to? So I can either change or I can either add. But what I'm going to do, because I've shown you how to create, is I'm going to modify this test and I say edit. Okay, perfect. Now I would say I don't want it to be simple anymore. I want it to be a menu. And sorry, it asks me what menu do I need to add. And I look at all of the menu items that are available and I find tests that are created. Say this is going to be test, right? Um, and I would say, okay, confirm. And I confirmed it. And immediately when you go down here, you see it change. It has that arrow there. And once you click it, it's test one or test two. And if I go and I press test one, I see a list of all the banks that are available because I linked it to the banks. And then test two, I see a list of all the companies that are available because I linked it to the company. Now, we don't want to ruin our system, do we? So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the, the menu items. This was just to show you how you manage your menus. It's not something you do all the time. It's probably not something that you would do without asking your technical guys to do. But at least it gives you an idea. And I can come here and delete, and it's just going to ask me, do you really want to delete this? Say yes, I don't want it anymore. And I've removed it from the main menu, and immediately, as you can see, it's no longer there. Now, the other work that you do on the application management, apart from the menu and permissions, is to go and edit. And here, you edit some basic information about the application. You edit the application name, so you can name it what you want. We've just named it Bitry Gateway. The two just stand for the second version that we have. And then there are other information that you need to be able to populate, right? Um, Remote authentication, if we have any third party authentication or REST services, SSO REST, do we have any REST services that we need to enable? Then you have to give the details. Either server is a client, and you provide the details. But that's not what we have on the application at the moment. You have STS. So if you want to enable the STS protocol, you need to name the server, the user, and all of those type of details. And then you have environment settings. So we know that the host is basically what you have. The base URL is the host, and it means that every other link that is being created and as the user is navigating around, this is what is allowing for that. You can mandatory make it HTTPS, but the reason why we don't have it HTTPS here is just to make sure that the developers that are running on the same application using a different environment that might not be an HTTPS environment for the sake of their work. For now, we are allowing it, but at a later stage, when we want to remove it, this can easily be removed, and so you're able to see the the idea here and what's going to happen. So it's fairly simple, and voila, that's how you manage your application. And next, what happens is the security policies. Now, again, this has to be a super administrator. I can't stress this enough. Not just any administrator should be able to do this, only the super administrator. So, to show you how you create a security policy, it's just basic policies that allows you to manage user information. You essentially name the policy, and then you provide the password configuration, right? How many days to change it, the minimum number of small characters, the minimum numbers of capital letters, the minimum password length, uppercase, special characters, the maximum password history entries, what's the number there, and when you're on the web, do you allow multiple concurrent sessions, yes or no? You can establish what the session timeout needs to be, and if there is a mobile application attached to this, you can also control what's happening on a smart device of the users. So at the moment, we only have a basic policy, and because of a few requirements from the team, we've had to basically provide codes for some of the requirement of the application. However, if you create a policy, you can force users to use that policy, and you don't have to use code for it. Next is the configurations. So when you go to configurations, it's just to configure a few basic things of your application, right? So you have your application name, um, what the namespace is, the description, enable tracing, and this is primarily for debugging. The default authentication type, obviously it's local because we only have the username and password. We don't have any other third-party service like Authenticate with Google, Authenticate with Apple. We don't have those. And the next one is to look into the user section. And when you look into the user section, for instance, you're able to see the user identification type. So it's the name and the email address. So the user needs to have name and user activation method. So we've spoken about this a few times, but it's essentially if I select automatic, it means that the minute the user completes the registration process, they are logged in. There is nothing that stops them, nothing that asks them to confirm. If I select user, it means that the user is going to receive um, an email to validate. If I select administrator, it means that the administrator needs to let them in. And then you have all of the other factors that the user can essentially manage, that the administrator can manage relative to the user, right? Required password, required first name, required last name, required birthday, required gender. So there are a few things that the administrator can play with in order to beef up the security from a user standpoint. There is also session management, and this speaks to how you manage a session for every user. And Then you would follow through with emails. So this is where you set up the emails that are sent to the user for different tasks pertaining to the security aspect. So and this is the email body for activating a user. If you want to send an email when the user changes the password, all you have to do is to activate, provide the details, and from the moment you save, that would occur. And it's the same process for the rest of the links that you would see on this side. So that's essentially what happens on the security side. I know that the video is long. I know that I've shown things. I tried to shorten it for the sake of demonstration. But what you need to retain and what you need to remember when it comes to the security is that you are able to manage users from an access standpoint, meaning that you're able to manage their user details to access the platform. You're able to manage their roles and the permissions, what they're able to do on the platform. You're able to allocate those roles and permissions. You are able to create roles and permissions. You're able to manage the application. And your ability here expand across two main functions. One is your menu. You're able to manage how the menu look and how the items are ordered. And the second is to be able to manage the application configuration file essentially. And again, we stress that these security should only be handled by the super administrator. And it's very important that the super administrator consult with the developers for this. And then you can manage your security policies. And in the security policies, you're essentially able to manage how the users would be able to log in, what are the conditions for the passwords, what are the conditions for session management. And lastly, you're able to manage the configuration of the application. And what this means is that the users are essentially, the administrator is able to change a few things. Is able to change the email details of the application, is able to change how users can log in, what's the login mechanism, and able to improve the security of a user. And you are also able to use the security policies, meaning that you can create a policy, you can clean a policy, you can create a policy, you can delete a policy, you can assign a policy to a few users, and that policy just protects users more. And so that's what you are allowed to do in the security section. Again, it's very, very important, although this is not in code, that the super administrator consult with the development team before this is implemented. Thank you.